in Birmingham, Alabama to see if it works for Section 8. So today I'll show you what I'm filtered on. I'm looking at 4-bedroom, single family homes in the Birmingham, Alabama market. And you can see right now I'm just filtered on 4 bedrooms and I'm looking at properties that are pretty new, properties that are less than 30 days. So you know that I'm only analyzing sort of fresh data here. So today I found this property, 1545 32nd Street, Birmingham, Alabama, 35218. It's 4 bed, 1 bath, just a little bit southwest of Birmingham. So this property looks relatively turnkey. It looks decent outside, at least without an inspection. I mean, for the most part, this part looks pretty good. Kitchen looks good. I mean, I don't know why these angles of these photos like that just doesn't seem smart. That doesn't make any sense to me. But okay, for the most part, this looks pretty decent. So now I can see that this property is probably on a relative standpoint pretty turnkey. So I'm gonna try to get a couple of data points here. So let me start by just starting the spreadsheet over. And again, I'm analyzing this live, just showing you how I go about this process. So 145, 900, 145, 900. I'm going to put that right into B4, which is my asking price. For my renovations, I'm going to go to my rehab calculator. I don't think I need to do any painting. It looks pretty good for the most part, and no flooring work needed here. I will probably put aside 1,500 bucks for the roof just because I've had some sort of roof work patching in all my properties. So I'll just set aside 1,500 bucks for that. Landscaping, I'll probably set aside 500 bucks for some landscaping just to keep it tidy until I get it rent ready or until it gets rented. I got no painting. I would probably replace one of the toilets with a high pressure flush toilets because I have these high pressure flush toilets at my properties right now, and I've never gotten a clogged toilet call, and I intend to keep it that way because when you get a plumber out there, it'll probably cost you 100 bucks, 200 bucks, just even for a service call. And to replace the toilet will probably cost 200 bucks. So I might as well save myself the time, the energy, and just get it replaced now. That's my philosophy. All right. So then next one up is I need to put in a cage for my HVAC because I've had my HVAC stolen before in this market and I didn't have a cage. So I know better now. I am going to put in a cage for 900 bucks just so it makes sure I don't get it stolen. So that gives me a I don't need these because the utilities are already there. I don't need to repaint the cabinets. I don't need a new washer or dryer. So that gives me a total rehab of roughly around $4,000. Great. So that flows right into my rehab budget of B6. So for my rent, that's the next output I want to look at. The first thing you want to do is you want to look up HUD FMR. If you Google HUD FMR, you see on the first link right here, scroll down, click on small area FMRs, and you're going to see that FY 2025 small area FMRs, select your state, select your county, and you're going to see that by bedroom count, by zip code, this is 35218. The rent ceiling for a 4-bedroom in this market is going to be 1580. So let's write that one down. 1580, and then your 3-bed is 1420. Just so I have these numbers there. 4-bed, 3-bed. Great. Now that I got these numbers in here, I don't care about my 2-bed. Let me just get my 4-bed. So now I'm going to go to affordablehousing.com. I'm going to go to the owner section. I'm going to go to the market rent estimator. I'm going to plug in the address, plug in a bedroom count, and I can see that for 25 units within a 2.63-mile radius, the average rent is 1301. So I'm going to put 1301 right here. And I'm noting these things down because my partners already know how I analyze deals. So this is the fastest way for me to send them a copy of the spreadsheet. Okay. 2.63. All right. 1301. Great. So now that I got these details in here, all right, what you're going to want to look at next is, well, what is my lower of the two, right? A lot of people make the mistake. This is the first and big mistake that they make is that they see that even though the market rent is 1301, they might have listened to some fake guru on yesterday. Good job. Okay. Okay, you got it. Thank you. All right, so now we got 25 units for a 2.63 mile radius at 1301, and you compare that against 1580. A lot of times people will take that 1580 and just assume that's a rent, but this is the rent ceiling, which means that if you don't provide utilities, you also have to deduct the utility allowances from the 1580. So it'll list out typically, hey, the utility allowance for electricity for a 4 bedroom single family home is $100. And if you don't provide that, you have to deduct $100 from the ceiling. Thank you. 1 second, okay? Did I finish working? Okay. Thank you. So like that is my favorite color. All right. So now that I got 1580, you now have to understand the rent reasonableness test. Now let me show you what that means. If you look up the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook, you can see that HCV right here on the top, this is what Section 8 was previously known as. They rebranded it from Section 8 to Housing Choice Vouchers because of all the negative connotations that were associated with Section 8. So if you go to Section 2.2, oh, that link didn't work. So you got to go 2.2. I guess I'll just scroll down. It says that in conducting rent reasonableness, it says that the PHA or the Public Housing Authority must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassessed units. So this means that you can't charge more rent for a property just because they are a Section 8 voucher holder, right? For the obvious reasons. Obviously, the size, the unit type matters, but it's very rare for you to see 4 bedroom apartments. So I'm very confident that these 25 units are going to be single family homes, which is why I got to use 1300 because that's a more reasonable rent. So that's a difference of roughly $280 if you had used the other number instead of 1301. All right. Please, please, please be very careful about this. All right. So now I'm going to get my other expenses numbers. I'm going to go to my payment calculator. I get $54 right here for my property taxes. Plug that right in. And then I got 113 for my insurance. So I'll do equals 113 times 1.2. And I'm multiplying by 1.2 because I'm expecting that that 113 number here was an estimate for a primary residence property. And if you use a property for an investment property, it's going to be much riskier to the insurance carrier. So that's why I'm adding a 200% premium. For B32, I'm going to put in my maintenance for 10%. So 10% of my rent I set aside every single month for maintenance because I know that the roof is going to get replaced at some point. I know that the water heater is going to get replaced at some point. Same thing for my HVAC. Yes, Soleil. Dad, just going to finish up doing the live and Alan's deal, okay?
Daddy, take a too long time.
I take too long? Okay, I'm going to finish fast in like 5 more minutes, okay?
It take a long time.
Can you start cutting your socks on? We'll start getting ready for God's dinner. Okay?
Baba, I don't have my stuff.
All right. Then from HOA, I do not have any expenses right here. For my property management, it's probably closer to 10% in this market. So I'm going to do 0.1. And then for my vacancy expense, I got 5% because guess what? Eventually someone moves out of your home. Eventually. Just a matter of time. All right. So my down payment in F19, I'm going to do 25%. So my down payment amount is going to equal to my B4, which is my asking price times my down payment percentage of 25%. So I'll do a 25% down. So that's 36 grand. I got 3% for closing costs right now, 4,000 for my renovations. So in case 6, if I'm using a DSCR, debt service coverage ratio loan, my finance amount is going to equal to my B4 minus my down payment percentage. That's 25%. I got 7.5% for my interest rate. I got 30 years for amortization. So if you bought this property as a 4 bedroom and you rent it out for 1301, you will cash flow $21 a month with a cash and cash return of 0.6%, assuming you bought this property for $145,900 with a $4,000 rehab, 25% down, 7.5% interest rate. Great. So now you might say, hey, that's not a deal. Why would I do all this work to break even? What if your target return was, let's call it 8%? What do you need to lower your asking price by to meet that 8% return? Let's lower this to 100 grand. Oh, great. So I have a little bit of room. 108. So in order for me to reach 8%, assuming this rounds up, The max price I want to offer for this property is $108,000 because at 108 grand, I can still cash flow $220 right here. 220, that's a 77% return with a 1301 rent. Great. And that's assuming everything else stays constant with a $4,000 rehab, 25% down, and a 7.5% interest rate. So this is the part where it gets interesting. What if you notice that the interest rate dropped over 1 point from 7.5 to 6.5%? Because you've been paying attention to what's happening in the market, right? Because the 30-year mortgage interest rate is affected by two things. One is the interest rate on a 10-year treasury yield. And the second part is the spread between the 10-year yield and the 30-year mortgage interest rates. Now, historically, that spread has been about 1.5 to 2%, but it goes as high as 3% when things were a little bit more uncertain. Just a couple months ago, it went as high as that. So it can easily drop half a point there, and your spread gets narrowed by half a point, and all of a sudden, it moves by a whole point. So this is why you got to pay attention to not the headlines, but what's happening to the 10-year treasury yield. All right? Because guess what? Just from your interest dropping down 1 point, your cash and cash return just jumped like almost 2 points. So now, if your interest rate drop 1 point, boom, you might be willing to pay 115 instead of 108, simply because your interest rates drop from 7.5 to 6.5, assuming everything else stays constant. Your rehab is still at $4,000, but now you're willing to pay 115 grand because you're still able to achieve a 8% cash and cap return. Let's do one more scenario. What if you get in the property, you're under contract, you have an inspection, and you realize that your interest rate or your renovation tripled to 12 grand? Tripled. So with 6.5%, you can go to $12,000 because it tripled. Even at 6.5%, what do you need to buy this property at? This one just dropped to 6.5. So now you might have to go back down to 108. So even though your rehab tripled from the last scenario of 115, you can now afford to pay $7,000 less and still achieve your same return instead of panicking and trying to figure out, hey, oh no, what I'm going to do. Just stay objective, keep it to the numbers, and that's the best way to go about it. All right. Hopefully, this was helpful, everybody. The whole reason why I do this is so that you guys can copy my homework, right? You can analyze the same deal I'm analyzing today, right? This is a spreadsheet, and this is a property I just found today. Using the same spreadsheet, if you guys want to go to affordablehousing.io, not .com, go to the Get Deal Analysis tool. That's the fastest way you get a copy of the spreadsheet. My hope is this: I hope you copy my homework, right? Start your own YouTube channel. Because at some point, someone's going to ask you, why do you think this is a deal? And you can tell them that you know this is the deal because you've been looking at properties for the past 605 days. Might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Monday, everybody. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Spend that quality time with your family and friends today, all right? Because that's what life is all about. And just remember, your kids are watching every move. So stay consistent. Do what you say you're going to do and be an example. Have an amazing Monday, everybody. I'll see y'all tomorrow for day 606. Have a good one.